It is No Gifts Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
And I'm Jenny Anchondo.
Nice to see you, and I have to thank you. I just had... and actually our listeners will know who this is, even though they don't realize they know who this is. I just had Jasmine Sadri on my new late night talk show.
Yes, one of my closest friends.
And also the voice of our pre-roll commercial here on No Gifts Please. She does the Vandergriff Toyota, Honda, Acura ads for us. She was, and I met her, 20 years ago, which she asked me to please stop mentioning because it ages both of us.
Exactly. You met her a while back in the media biz.
A minute ago when she was doing mornings with Jagger over on whatever.
I thought you were going to say Hawkeye, but you're right.
No, when
before
she was
that.
So she was, and we don't really keep in touch that much over the years, but I kind of, every 5 or 10 years we'll reconnect and whatnot. And I had seen her at your baby shower. And now that we have the new show, I was like, I feel like she would be, she did such a good job.
She's witty, isn't she?
She was very witty and very funny and like kind of a dude, which also adds
100
to her. Yeah.
100. She's a sporty spice.
She's a sporty spice.
Right?
So I appreciate you putting me in touch with her.
Go Mavs, go Rangers, go whoever. That's totally Jasmine. Okay. As a parent, do you think, I know the answer for me. Do you feel like you use your phone too much around your kids? Or do you feel like you have really good boundaries?
No, I have terrible boundaries. And here's the thing. I feel guilty about it, but I do it anyway. And I also feel that it's to the point now where I am teaching my children bad habits because, and I hate to admit this, but not only do I use my phone, but I use it when I'm sometimes when I'm driving, I know.
Like at a stoplight, I hope?
Yes, definitely at a red light.
But still,
I have to just because of the 24/7 business that we're in. And I feel like which I really don't. And I feel like I'm that they can't see that I'm doing it, but I also know that they're not stupid. Right.
Yeah.
And I every now and again, we'll be sitting on the couch watching TV next to them. And Doug and I will both be sitting there on our phones. And I always, in my mind, have you ever seen the photographer who does the pictures of people on their phones, but then removes, photoshops the phone out.
Yeah.
And it's this series of people just sitting next to each other and not paying attention to one another. And it's sad. And they do them in dark and black and white. And it's all very drab and but a real interesting commentary on the world we live in because we are so consumed by our digital devices, and I desperately need a diet.
I do too. I pride myself in always getting back to people in a quick manner. I pride myself on being, always available to my employer and, being reliable. You can always count on Jenny. She's going to
you always text me back
to the email. I'm always going to text back to a friend. If somebody needs something, I'll be there. However, that is to the detriment of, my neck health.
The
lines on my neck, but also just the boundaries, because sometimes I might have an appointment after work and then go home after that and think, okay, well, I'm going to write up my web story once I get home. So I'm technically still on the clock. So I really need to be checking in. But then at what point am I not on the clock? Is it 5 p.m.? Is it 5:30? Is it 6? Is it 7? Is it once the kids go to bed? I have got to
They have we just actually talked about this on my show. In Australia, they have it's called a right to disconnect law, and now they're doing it in San Francisco, which is employers may not contact you anymore after business hours, and if they do, it's a whole thing or whatever.
You can charge.
But
them.
we work in this weird business, but even people who don't work in our business, which by the way is the majority of everyone,
True.
I feel still is distracted by their phone. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't use my phone because 100% of the time I'm conducting business. There's also sometimes where I am just doom scrolling.
Send somebody a funny reel.
Right, on Instagram about things that I don't need. But the good news is we have some help.
Yes. So this is such an interesting story. When Joey Odom missed his son's first soccer goal because he was looking at his phone, he had a realization. I know. I feel like we've all been there. He said his phone was getting in the way of his best intentions as a dad and as a husband. Since then, he has been on a journey to change his relationship with his phone so that he can change his most important relationships in his life. I was really touched when I read that because I've definitely been on the verge of being there and being critical of myself and thinking, gosh, want to photograph your child, but also you want to be there in the moment. Anyway, he created a device that I think helps all of us. But Joey is actually on the podcast with us today. Hello, welcome, sir. Good to see you.
It's so good to see you, Jenny. So good to see you, Steve.
Okay, so kind of take me back to that moment, because I think that parents can identify with that feeling, right? Of being like, oh, I was just taking a moment, and what happened was I missed an even bigger moment.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I can play the scene out as if I were a third party, you know what I mean? It's just watching and seeing how it all played out with, and it's funny. I see it like it was a movie, clearly, because I didn't see the actual, I didn't see the actual moment, but as that ball kind of slow motion rolls over over the grass into the back of the net. And then Harrison, who was 5 at the time, who's almost 16 now, he turned to the sidelines instinctively before the crowd went wild, before his coach picked him up, because this was his first goal, just to share that moment with me, right? To see the smile and the pride on my face. And I still, I've told the story hundreds of times, and I still get emotional at times thinking about it, because that's my little boy, you know what I mean? And here he is with a, beam on his face to share the moment with me. And he just sees the top of my head as I'm looking down. And to your point, I have no idea what I was looking at. I could have been sending the most important work email of my life. I have no idea what it was. But it didn't matter to him. It doesn't matter what's going on the phone, because when he looked over, he saw that I was on there. And it was just this moment where I said, this relationship with my phone is getting in the way of my most important human relationships. One of the top 3 relationships I have in my life is my son. And it's getting in the way of it. And it just felt icky, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it just thought, is this really how things have to look? And that was the moment. And I would love to say that was the last time I've made such a mistake, but it's happened again and again and again. And it's one of these things that is part of our lives. And we have to figure out how we address this relationship with this thing, because it is subverting our most important relationships. And by the way, and just a quick, and this is no demonization of the phone. I love my phone, never getting rid of it, not going to a flip phone. I freaking love it. And so it's not a question of yes or no, get rid of, have one or don't have one. It's how do we manage the gray area, the nuance of the relationship with it?
It's interesting the way that you tell that story. So I do a lot of work in the recovery community, and it's the same tale of addiction, right? And you talk about in that moment, it was all of these years later. I mean, he was 6, now he's 16. So 10 years later or 11 years later, however long ago it was, and you still have that feeling in it. You would think that feeling, that raw feeling of oh my God, I've just let this kid down, in this moment of pride that he had that I didn't share with him, would have been a big enough defense against picking up the device again. And even in that moment, it wasn't. So what do people do? Because as you mentioned, I was going to ask, I'm assuming, unfortunately, that probably wasn't the last time that happened, even though it was so poignant.
Yeah, and I love that you have that perspective on it, because you're exactly right. It's the will that we have, or okay, I'm going to conjure up all this willpower or this self-discipline to do it. That's just not enough, right? That's not enough. We need practical tools. We need practicality to be able to solve this for ourselves. And I think one of the foundational elements of it is, and I think this is, there are a couple reasons why I think as a society we're still struggling with this so much. One of them is, it feels like it should be easier. This seems like a very simple solution, right? And so it's almost like we're not acknowledging how actually difficult it is. And it's okay to say, this is really hard to put my phone down, right? We've developed this relationship with it that says that it needs to be with us all the time. That's one. And then the second thing is, we feel a bunch of tension around it, but I don't know that we've properly identified the problem that we're trying to solve. Because if I were to say to you, I mean, you in your discussion, it was, oh, I'm on my phone too much. Or Jenny, you actually said it well. I'm on my phone in front of my kids more than I'd like to. That's actually a very good, specific way of saying it. Okay. But generally, it's I'm on my phone too much. Well, what does that mean? That's
sure.
Dude, I look at my screen time report on Sundays, and it says I was on for, let's say 3 hours a day, and then you could look and be like, well, an hour of that was Waze, and
sure.
So was that a bad use of screen time? And so we've begun to demonize all screen time, which is an improper way of looking at it, versus looking at it through the lens of relationship and saying this thing is a distraction. A distraction is anything that gets in the way of my intentions. So if I do want to go scroll Instagram for 15 minutes by myself, maybe that's okay if that's my intention, but my intention probably is not to scroll Instagram for 15 minutes sitting at the dinner table with my family, right?
Right.
And so looking at it through, and this is a nuanced discussion, and looking through it through the lens of a relationship, I believe is the proper way for us to look at it. And then when we know that, okay, now I can go do something about it very practically.
So what do we do? Where's the boundary? If that's even the word.
No, it's a very good question. And a line that I love is that healthy relationships don't need rules. And we can all acknowledge this is an unhealthy relationship that we have with our devices. So let's begin there and say we do need some rules. We do need some parameters for it. I believe that the very first thing, like if you look at how we form human relationships, they're usually based on three kind of fundamental items, right? The first is proximity. When we're around somebody, we're more likely to have a relationship with them. And then when it comes to our phones, we have our phones with us all the time. 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day. The next level of relationship, what builds a relationship, is interaction. When you're interacting more with somebody, you're more likely to become friends with them. That's why we're friends with people who are our kids' parents. Mm-hmm. Those are our friends, right? The people we're around more. When it comes to our phones, we're interacting with our phones all the time. 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated. We are the ones that are initiating this behavior because they're with us all the time. And then third is dependence. We have a dependence, not in a terrible way on our phones, but we do have a dependence on our phones because they do a lot of good stuff for us. And so those three things together, proximity, interaction, dependence, call what we call the PID loop, PID, the PID loop. And because we're proximate to them, we interact with them more, which means we become more dependent on them, which means we're with them all the time again, and it just continues on and on. So the thing we have to address is the proximity piece. And when we do that, that's the domino that changes everything. If we can begin to get this thing away from us for some amount of time every day, then that's when things really begin to change. So we can go into it we have four ways that you can change your relationship with your phone. I'm happy to go into those.
I want them all.
Well, but it's interesting because first I want to kind of double click on a couple of things that you said, because, I think that people, when you say, you've got your phone, what people hear is, oh, you're on your phone 24 hours a day. And it's like, well, clearly I'm not on my phone 24 hours a day. But when you just said this thing is with me 24 hours, you are absolutely right. I am never more than 5. I take my phone into the shower with me because I'll be watching an edit that I have to go over, or watching, the news, or it is laying next to me on my nightstand when I'm sleeping. It is in my pocket when I'm not. I will be anchoring a newscast and my phone is right there with me.
Always
anchoring, texting, doing, I'm communicating with, people will be texting me like, how are you texting me? You're on the air. I'm like, you're fine.
It's fine. I haven't had Joey's intervention yet.
But it's interesting that you say that, because when you look at that, the reality of, wow, there is nothing else in my life other than my belly button that is with me as often, as this phone is. And even though I'm aware and cognizant of that, especially kind of in this reformatted way that you've just described, my first instinct that I'm experiencing right now is I'm making a mental list of the buts. But what if? But how could I? But what if they need to? Right. What if it's my boss? Do I need to get a landline? What? So how do I mitigate that? So let's kind of start with the four, principles, and we have a ton of follow-up questions.
Well, first, Steve, I just love that you've said that with such self-awareness, and that's where we begin. We do begin. Even saying that you rationalize is self-awareness, right? And we all rationalize, and it's because, for anybody listening, I think it's easy to go down a shame spiral here. We got to remove the shame from this. We have to remove the shame. Is not going to do anything practical for us. Yes, we are all attached to our phones all the time. Yes, we've also only had them in our lives for 16 years. And none of us had parents who taught us how to do this. We haven't had a generation in front of us who said, hey, here's how we do this well. So we have to begin from a place of grace with ourselves and say, okay, I'm learning this and I'm going to take some steps for it. So our four ways to change your relationship with your phone, and with a promise, when you change your relationship with your phone, you change your relationships with everyone around you. And the first one, these are 4 S's, these are alliterative. So the first thing we have to do is this is the play on Simon Sinek's great book a few years ago, Start With Why. We have to start with I. We've gotten into a very bad habit as a society of blaming our kids and saying the kids are the problem. We've gotten a very bad habit in society of blaming our partners. Well, my partner's always on their phone, right? Gotten very bad habits of that. We have brilliant voices like Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, which everyone should read. And he's given us some cultural norms. One of them is phones need to be out of schools. Great idea. Love that idea. The Surgeon General says this is a public health crisis, and he's helping establish a national strategy to reconnect with people again. Congress just passed a TikTok ban. All these things are great, but I can't wait for the school board. I don't have time for it. I can't wait for Congress. My kids aren't going to wait. I can't wait for the Surgeon General. I have to start with myself, because as parents, we followed the 3 M's. We model a bad relationship with our phones, where we have it at the dinner table, or we interrupt a conversation and phone snub our kids or our partners. We model this bad relationship. We give our kids a phone one day. They mimic what we've modeled. And then we do something that's absolutely crazy with the third one. We get mad at our kids for mimicking what we modeled to them. What are we doing? Right?
I feel very seen today.
Yeah, totally.
But if we did this, if we stopped waiting for other people to solve it and the school boards to solve it, and if we said, this is my problem, I'm going to address this. Taylor Swift would say, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Right? If we said, I'm the problem, this issue would be solved today. It would require 300 million Americans to say that this is my problem. But the first one is, we must start with ourselves. So that's number one. The second one is very tactical. It is for each of us to spend 1 hour physically distant from our phones daily. 1 hour physically distant. Dr. Maxie Heitmeyer at the London School of Economics says the only way for you to reduce your screen usage is for it to be physically distant from you and out of your visual field of sight. So 1 hour. Now, you may say, Steve, I've never done this. I take it in the shower with me. So what I would say to you is, approach this just like you would if someone said you needed to run a marathon. Don't go run 26 miles today. Run a mile today. So start with 5 minutes today. And Steve, I'll just say to you directly, start with 5 minutes today, physically distant from your phone. And then tomorrow, I want you to do 6 minutes. And the day after that, you guessed it, I want you to do 7 minutes, right? So let's begin to build up a muscle and a tolerance. This is a muscle that we're building. You don't have to get it all right today. If you're somebody else who, hey, I do this on a regular basis. I already have an hour. Let's keep building that muscle up. By the way, there was no one worse in America than me at this. I promise you that. I spend about 3.5 hours physically distant from my phone every day now, and I track it on the RO app. So I know, and this is very achievable. The third one is, I want you to establish sacred times and sacred places without your phone. So beginning in the home, the easiest one, pun intended, table stakes are the table. Mm-hmm. What if we began, the table is just absolutely phone free? Here's another one. How about the living room couch, where you can have a family movie without a second screen? How about, in terms of times, the first 30 minutes after you wake up in the morning, or the last 30 minutes before you go to bed? Establish those times as sacred and unbreakable. These are the absolute times and absolute places. Begin small with those, but establish sacred times and sacred places. And then the fourth one is to search for moments of connection. And this is, if spend 1 hour a day is the science, this is the art. And this is where it gets really fun, because you have an opportunity to be an investigator of what's happening around you, of your most important relationship. So here's an example of a potential moment for connection. If my 14-year-old daughter walked in the house and her shoulders were kind of slumped, I kind of noticed that something was off. Or if my son, Harrison, who's almost 16, said, Dad, tennis practice was really tough today. I didn't play well. Okay, there's a potential moment for connection. If my wife said, I'm really struggling today, I'm feeling kind of anxious, there's a potential moment. And we have this amazing opportunity in a relationship to say what I believe are the 6 most powerful words in a relationship in 2024. And it's going to sound crazy that these are the 6 words. But when I notice those moments arise, if I said to them, hey, let me put down my phone. Let me put down my phone. And then I go physically put my phone somewhere else. And then I go sit and I make eye contact with that person. What that is telling them is this, is that there are theoretically 8 billion people on earth who can reach me on my phone. And right now, you're more important than every single one of them. So what do we think that does for a 14-year-old girl the next time that she's confronted with body comparison or bullying? What does that do for her? She knows, no, my dad loves me.
Yeah, that's
because I know
so
my
beautiful.
dad sees me.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. Also, to his wife, Like who says she's anxious and he's not running away and being like, I have a phone call.
I'm describing the ideal version of myself.
Yeah.
But you're so right, though. I mean, how many times am I having a conversation with my husband and I'm sorry. Real quick, my boss is, and it's like we are in the middle of having a conversation, and it could be the most inane conversation, or it could be the most important conversation.
Yeah.
But the point is, what I'm saying to you in that minute is, you are not the most important part of my day.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. And by the way, I just want to go back to like the distant thing. I'm away from your phone physically. I'm assuming you mean during the waking hours of the day. Like
that is good.
He's going to set an alarm from 1 to 2 a.m. and be like, here, I'm going to put it over here by Doug for an hour.
But it's interesting that you say that. I follow one of these, many parenting accounts on Instagram. And one of them was talking about how their teenage kids don't like hang out, like they don't do stuff. They all get over this. Mom was like, we have a phone-free house because I noticed that my teenage daughter and her 10 friends all sit around when they come over to hang out, and they all sit on the couch next to each other. They hang out near each other, and they all just sit and stare at their phones for 3 hours. And then they're like, okay, we're done hanging out. So she said, I have a no phones policy, and we do things like play board games or talk or play charade, whatever. And the kids have so much fun. Prank call people. I mean, the kids have so much fun, and it's so old fashioned, for lack of a better term. But it's like, when I look back at my own life and I think about playing cards with my grandparents, or like playing, silly games with friends, or whatever the case is, it's like, it didn't even dawn on me that we are raising a generation of people who don't know how to hang out with each other because they're just buried in their phone.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's just, when you think about the intimacy in your marriage, Steve, and I say intimacy in terms of closeness, right? There is nothing that, and this is, I'm not to specify it to you, for all of us, there's nothing that kills an intimate moment more than just that little glance. Like I could have, you be having an hour conversation, and you're so right. And what's cool about it, to me, again, this is where it's really easy to start kind of shifting into shame, and that's not the intent at all. To me, this is where it shifts into opportunity. If at the beginning of that, if your husband, the two of you are on a date, if you said, will you hold this for me? Well, Dad, I just want to be here with you. That just sets the tone. All of a sudden you become a thermostat, not a thermometer, right? You're setting the temperature for that moment.
And
thermostat. And just imagine what can happen there, because I really do think that in America we are suffering from an intimacy crisis.
1,000,000%.
And it's death by 1,000 glances. It's death by 1,000 glances. Every glance
so
at the phone
hurtful.
It really is. We know how crappy it feels when we get it, but and then we rationalize doing it on the other side. And again, say for the third time, this is no shame. We get it. We're all struggling with it. It's really, really hard, and it requires intentionality. And if we're trying to conjure up willpower nonstop, we're going to lose if our environment is not conducive to that. That's why we have to physically do something to our environment. James Clear says in Atomic Habits that environment is always stronger than willpower. So our environment has to be conducive towards these intentions we have.
So I'm sure that, I'm sorry.
I have a question over here. Go ahead.
Why don't you just text me your question?
Okay, well, I'll submit it to the committee.
Go ahead.
Okay. There's this group called Wait Till 8th, and a bunch of parents have signed the pledge. We signed the pledge where you do it in like pre-K or kindergarten, and you're agreeing, like as a parent collective, to not get your children phones until 8th grade. I've had parents, a lot of my friends who are parents have kids much older, and they're like, that's a joke, Jenny. No, you're never going to be able to wait till 8th. That's ridiculous. What do you have any thoughts on that? Like, is there an appropriate age at which children should be getting phones? If, all things considered, obviously, divorced parents, I think they maybe get a little earlier, that sort of thing. But as a general rule,
I will tell you this. Two things. One, I love Wait Until 8th. Brooke Shannon is the head of that. They're out of Austin. And even though I'm a Sooner fan, it's okay. I can have things in Austin. I love that organization. I will also say that we didn't wait until 8th. And I think that studies are coming out more. Again, Jonathan Haidt talks about this. He thinks that we need to wait till high school for phones. So he takes it a little bit further. And then 16 for social media. I believe the science is going to continue to prove out what the appropriate age is. A second thought to that. So I have three thoughts. That's one. The second thought is, collective action is the answer. We have to do things together. So I think the age that parents need to probably come together right now is probably third or fourth grade, to get in very early. So you can kind of diffuse when your child says, I'm the only one who doesn't have a phone yet. I'm like, hold on one second. And there are great smartwatches and things like that where you can reach your child too. So it doesn't have to be all, smartphone versus nothing at all. So there's some different ways. TrueMe and Gab and Bark and companies like that are doing a really good job with that. So that's the second one. But then the third one is, we got to be really careful here if we are hoping that that's going to solve all the answers.
Okay.
Like all of a sudden a 14-year-old is going to know what to do with the internet, unfettered access to that, or a phone. I don't believe so. This is where we as parents, we have to get this right in modeling right now. We have to get it right. They are going, no matter what age they get it, they are going to mimic what we're modeling to them. So I believe this really does start with us as parents. And this is what we signed up for as parents. We signed up for the hard things. And this is the thing for our generation that we have the opportunity to get right by modeling it well.
So I think that first of all, I love the idea of kind of this group think when it comes to things like that, like so that you have an entire grade of parents that are saying we are all, and I get that not everyone's going to do it, but
some people have already left the group chat.
Trust me, we have a friend, it was like we were last year on a field trip and this kid's in kindergarten. He's like, look, I have a phone. And I was like, what? Like, but it was kind of like, oh, it's a cute, who are you going to call? Who's calling you? Your mom's here with you, you know? And I think it was done more in like a ironic and kind of cute way, you know, but like he was it made him feel that he had something as important in his life that the adults have, you know what I mean? So I think this idea of like this collective, like we're all going to wait. And even if only half of us do it, at least we can lean on each other and say, well, Johnny doesn't have one or Sally doesn't have one or whatever the case is. Okay. So, but for the people who are listening and saying, okay, but I'm super important and maybe I've got a sick mother or I've got a boss that calls me at all hours, or how could I possibly say I'm at, from dinner time until bedtime for the kids, I'm going to set my, phone in another part of the house or God forbid, turn it off, altogether. And I've actually tried to do that. I was looking for a setting on my iPhone and maybe you can help me. I was like, wouldn't it be great if I could, because every now and again I get the wild hair to actually do this, to say, could I program a message that said, I'm intentionally spending more time present with my family, I'm hanging out with Jody Odom. I will not be answering calls until such and such. And like kind of just like when you're driving and you've got that do not disturb and it gives you like, is there something like that can help me?
Unfortunately not. iOS doesn't allow those automatic replies. So iPhone doesn't allow us to do that, which is unfortunate. And that's one, certainly within our business, within our product, that would be very helpful because we are a designated place where people put their phones down. I would say the answer to the other one is we have to be really careful about being kind of one size fits all for this. And this is why I do think an hour is possible for everybody every single day, but we also understand that may come in different chunks. And so this requires a super high level of self-awareness. It really, really does. It requires a very high level of self-awareness that says, okay, it's the dinner table. Do I have 20 minutes? Okay, it's Friday night and it's family movie night. I think I can can I really do this for an hour and a half? My guess is probably yes. And my guess is that people are not the outliers that they think they are. I know I probably overvalue myself and think that I'm really important. Then I'm away from my phone for a couple hours and didn't get anything. And my great aunt didn't die during that 2-hour movie or whatever that may be. And the upside of it is so much greater than that potential risk. So I'll tell you a quick story. When my daughter was 10 years old, Gianna, and this was May 8th, 2020. I know this because I read my journal the other day. Right when we were starting RO, right when we were beta testing, we watched a Harry Potter movie, and at the end of the movie, 10 years old, she was not judging me and she was not congratulating me when she said this. She said, "Daddy, did you know that's the first time we've watched a movie and you haven't had your phone?" Ooh. And it was a little bit of a gut punch at first. It was like, I kind of, screwed this up for about 10 years. But the other side of me said, okay, this feels really good. I've done something that she noticed because our kids, let's not forget, our kids are noticing machines. All they do is notice, adapt. So she noticed that. And I told her this story the other day because I just read in my journal. I told her she's 14 now. And she laughed. The very first thing she did, she laughed. She goes, Dad, that would be so weird if you had your phone now during a movie.
Oh,
wow.
That's nice.
So look at what happened. What is normal? Like what is cultural in our home? What's normal has shifted from the guy, I'll say it again, from the guy who had made more mistakes than anybody, at deeper depths of mistakes than anybody when it comes to being on my phone. And that normal has changed for her. And I believe that's going to permeate throughout the rest of her life and what she expects in relationships, what she expects in a dating relationship. Right. If a guy phone snubs her during dinner, she'll probably let him pay for the meal and then never see him again, right?
Yeah.
At a girl.
And so exactly. So the normal that we all have the opportunity to do this, by the way. And this is, she didn't say it the next day. She said it 4 years later. And this takes time. And if we can say we are in a process of development ourselves and helping our kids develop as well.
We do have to let you go, but real quick before we do, there is a product component here, and you're very gracious. Most people come on and like, I need to talk about my product, and you told us the exact opposite. But we've referred to it.
But it is very cool,
and it is very cool. I do want to make mention here. I mean, listen, this has kind of become your life's work now. So tell me about RO.
Yeah, RO. To begin, RO is a term from the Maori language that means to notice. And so we want people to notice. It means to turn towards, to take heed. And so our goal with this is that people can notice and turn towards and take heed to the things that are most important to them. So RO is a platform for the entire family. It's a technology platform that helps this technology problem. You're watching right here. It's over my right shoulder. It's the RO box where you put your phone, it holds and charges your phone and automatically connects to an app that begins to quantify the amount of time that you're away from your phone. And then the app interface gamifies the experience of being away from your phone. So you can see how much time you spent today. You can tag your sessions like a fitness tracker. You can compete with people in your home. And it provides a gamified experience to make it easy to spend some time away from your phone. And it's for the person who has said, hey, I've tried this and I'm having a hard time. Hey, I've tried other things. I'm really struggling with this. Will this help? And I'll tell you from the thousands of people who have used it, including the guy talking right now, this really will change your life if it's something you've struggled with. And RO is built around that to help solve that core relationship we have with our phones so that we can thrive in our real relationships.
Is there like a lock timer on it, like those Oreo boxes that you put cookies in?
And it's not by design. This is a carrot, not a stick. It's an invitation to presence. If it could speak, it would say, hey, it looks like you're about to have dinner. Can I hold your phone so you can be present? So it's an invitation and it's not a mandate. It's to build healthy, sustainable relationships with our phones.
I love it. Where can people find out more?
Go to goaro.com, GOARO.com. Or you can follow us on Instagram at GoRO now.
I love it.
Joey Odom, you have given us a lot to think about. And I just really, really enjoyed the discussion. Congratulations on all of your success. And thank you for
thank you so much for
pause here.
Yes, and for giving us so much of your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm feeling inspired. What about you?
I am.
I'm feeling guilty, actually, and then inspired.
I'm thinking back on what started my phone addiction, and I can tell you exactly when, because I actually didn't used to be somebody that always had it with me. What started me on it, or what kind of like got me hooked, was the health tracker app when I was always trying to get my 10,000 steps. And I wasn't walking as much. And so I was like, you know how all women's yoga pants, or I don't know why you would know this, but
no, I do.
All the good ones have
the
pockets on the side so you can put your phone there. And I started going after those pants so I could put my phone in it so it could track like a pedometer. Well, then because you have it with you all the time, then you're like looking at it on your walk or you're looking at it in the bathroom. You're looking at it constantly because it's in the pants pocket. And that was what sort of made me more addicted to it. Or I would think I'm going to put it down, but I'm only at 8,000 steps. It's really dumb.
Well, and how interesting.
And I don't know if any of you relate
to Joey's point, right? Like we are at the point where we are being trained as a society to culturally have our phones with us all the time. The idea that exercise pants are being manufactured with a pocket for your phone while you are doing yoga, which is supposed to be like this, like, Zen. Like Zen, namaste, like I'm away from the digital world experience, but now we're manufacturing clothing so that you can have your phone on you is just absurd. One of the things that I love that what he said, because at first I was like, all right, an hour. And it didn't even dawn on me until he kind of quantified it. Okay, but it doesn't have to be a continuous hour. I could do, how about a cumulative hour over the course of the day? I could do 15 minutes, certainly during dinner, certainly during I mean, I have my phone with me during bath time when I'm bathing the kids, and I would be lying if I said I was never using it and bathing our son at the same time.
Right. Well, I mean, sometimes it's like you want music or something like that, right?
Oh, but if I'm being totally transparent, I'm not, I would love to say, oh, well, I'm playing Beethoven so that my son can become this, cultural genius, but I'm not. I'm texting my boss, or I'm texting you about, something, or,
we should start encouraging each other when we have a delayed response, instead of being like, thanks for getting back to me so quickly.
Thanks for taking time for your family.
Yeah. Thanks for acknowledging this family you all tried so hard to have.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at the two of us specifically, I mean, Doug and I spent a lot of money and a lot of science to have these children, right? Like, and here I am, like, saying that my iPhone, they're here, and they're here for such a short amount of time. And for somebody who, like me, is obsessed sometimes with the thoughts of like my own mortality or the amount of time I have left with them or how quickly they're growing up. Like, it's crazy to me that it takes Joey in Nashville or wherever the heck he was from, like, to kind of point out to me, like, listen, there's a different way to do this, right? It's so simple.
It's so simple.
I do not have the willpower on my own.
Okay.
Yet.
Well, so we need to get the box.
Okay.
Like we need to get the box. We'll link it up on the show notes and everything, you guys. I think this was a really great discussion.
Yeah, I loved it. I know we went a little long today, but it was absolutely
Look
worth
up
it.
the wait till 8 thing too, you guys. I know that he said it sort of like ebbs and flows and there's no one solution, but I love being aligned.
I also walk away from this interview feeling like I need to read way more. There were some very meaningful casual references that this man just meant to literature
and everything. I mean, well, that's when he's not on his phone, he's actually reading books, which I mean, I don't know if you do that anymore. It's been a minute for me.
I knew it. All right. Hey, you can grab your phone and listen to us every Tuesday morning at 7:00. We've got a new episode for you available wherever podcasts are playing. And we do want to remind you to click like and subscribe so we can keep doing what we love doing. And if you do nothing else today besides put your phone down, go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. We'll see you soon.